found out my son isn't biologically mine, but everyone seems sure I'm not going to get a divorce. They think that because I gave up my position as the eldest son and chose to live as a stay-at-home husband for 7 years, everyone sees me as a pushover. On our wedding day, my wife left me again to throw a party for our son with her childhood friend. Everyone was laughing at me, but I didn't make a scene. Quietly, I bought a ticket to leave the country. 3 days went by before Laura finally called me. Before I could say anything, a man's voice came through. "Tim, I'm really sorry. It was the anniversary of my wife and child's death the other day, and I wasn't feeling great. Laura was just worried and stayed with me instead of attending the wedding. I've already talked to her about it. And about that post she made to comfort me, it's deleted now, so don't worry about it." The man turned and said, "Laura, come on, a wedding is important. You can't just leave. You're a mom now, can't act like a kid anymore. I can spoil you forever. But can Tim?" Watching the scene made me nauseous. Just as I was about to speak, Laura cut in. "Calvin, if you keep pushing me to go back, I really won't come next time. You just started feeling better. How could I leave you alone?" Her voice was sweet, something I'd never heard before. To me, she'd always been a queen, commanding her will. I tried to swallow my bitterness and spoke. "Laura, if Calvin needs you, then don't come back. I'll prepare the divorce papers and send them over." I couldn't stand to hear their lovey-dovey chatter any longer and interrupted them. "Tim, how long are you going to drag this on?" Laura raised her voice immediately. "If you heard Calvin, you'd know his wife's death anniversary was just the other day. Couldn't you have some perspective?" Her words flew out fast and sharp. I just pressed my lips together, used to it by now. My concern was always seen as constriction. My careful opinions were chains. I used to self-reflect after hearing her complaints, wondering if I was too controlling. Then I'd humbly apologize and promise her more freedom. But we've been married for 7 years. How did caring turn into restricting her freedom? "Laura, I'm serious this time. This time, when I carefully planned the wedding I'd looked forward to, the bride ran away. When my son was held by another man, and my wife snuggled happily next to him. I'm tired, really tired." Feeling the coldness in my voice, Laura hesitated for a moment, softening her tone. "Tim, you're overthinking. It was Calvin's sad day, and I just wanted to comfort him. We can have the wedding anytime you want. We can do it however you want, okay?" I even deleted the post, it was just a couple of pictures. Calvin's practically a second dad to our baby. A family photo wasn't out of place. "Tim, why can't you have a little empathy?" Calvin, Laura's childhood friend, her first love at 16. Calvin's fake tone came through the phone. "Tim, if anyone's to blame, it's me. Laura did it for me. If you need me to apologize, I will. Whatever makes you feel better, I'll do it." "An apology?" I laughed. "Go ahead, I'm not picky. Choose one. Pick the one you'd like to do. Better hurry, 'cause the divorce papers will be ready by afternoon." As soon as I said it, there was silence. Calvin hadn't expected me to take him up on it. Laura took over the phone after some sputtering. "Tim, you're acting like a petty person. Calvin was just trying to smooth things over. You want him on his knees to apologize? It's you who should be apologizing for the comment you made. Do you know how many calls we got because of that? Calvin's already emotional, and you made it worse. So you want a divorce? Fine. Don't regret it." She yelled and hung up without waiting for my response. I put down the phone, feeling a sharp pain in my chest. 7 years, over 2,000 days and nights, my misplaced affection. How could I not feel heartache? Laura's superiority over me was something I cultivated. We met in college. She was a freshman, young and beautiful. Lots of guys were head over heels for her. I was no exception. It was love at first sight for me, and I started a 3-year journey of trying to win her over. I'd bring her breakfast rain or shine and help her out with everything. I even planned our classes to be the same. Through it all, her other suitors came and went, but I stuck around. She always kept me guessing with her mixed signals. As graduation approached, I was ready to give up the chase. But the day I stopped bringing her breakfast, She was standing outside my dorm with some for me. Tim, I didn't say it was over. Why are you giving up? That was our first day together, and it changed everything. I didn't go back to City A or take over my dad's company. I stayed with Laura in her small hometown. And later, because she didn't want to leave her parents, I moved in with them without complaining. We lived together in a cramped apartment for 7 years. My family tried countless times to convince me I could have had an easy and affluent life. Why did I choose hardship? But she was Laura, the girl I fell in love with at first sight, the one I wanted to protect. Because Laura said she had marriage anxiety, we kept putting off the wedding. Tim, I'm sorry. I want to give you a home too, but I'm just too scared of marriage. I can't get over it. Sorry, I know it's not fair to you. I've heard Laura say this to me countless times over the past 7 years. And every time, I just hold her tight, feeling only sympathy. It's okay. As long as we're together, who cares if we never have a wedding? Back then, I naively thought I was the happiest man alive. Until Calvin came back from abroad. His wife and child had died in an accident, and he spent 6 months in the hospital. After he got out, he chose to return home, leaving that sad place behind. That's when Laura and he reconnected. At first, I didn't think much of it. But slowly, things started feeling off. Calvin's not feeling well. I'm not comfortable leaving him alone, so I won't be home tonight. It's Calvin's birthday today. He doesn't have many friends here, so I'll have dinner with him and won't be back for dinner. Calvin has a work trip out of town. How can a man take care of himself properly? I'm going with him for a few days. Laura started coming home less and less. Her attitude towards me grew colder. Every few sentences, she'd mention Calvin. I've argued with her about it, trying to get her to keep her distance from Calvin. But as soon as I mentioned him, Laura would jump down my throat. Calvin and I grew up together. He's been through so much. Why can't I look out for him a bit? Tim, I'm human. I have the right to choose my friends. I'm not some caged bird you own. Even my mother-in-law was always on her side. Tim, you're just overthinking it. I watched Calvin grow up. He and Laura are like siblings. Besides, look at how well Calvin's doing in his career. He can help Laura out. But you? No skills and petty to boot. If Laura had married Calvin, she'd have such a better life now. No skills? Petty? Those words cut deep. Laura, I gave up everything to be with you. I left my family, turned away from a strong support system. If not for being with you, I would have taken over the family business by now. I'd be worth millions. Instead, I serve you and your parents every day like a servant, getting mocked for not having skills just because I mentioned another man. What was it all for? It was because I loved you. Because I loved you, your needs came first in my heart, above everything else. Turns out, time helps us forget. 7 years later, Laura forgot it all, leaving only disappointment and endless criticism for me. But even I can get tired. Gradually, I started accepting it all, choosing avoidance over fighting. I backed away, step by step, growing more and more silent. Earlier this year, Laura got pregnant. It seemed like her attitude shifted. Finally, she proposed the idea of a wedding. At that moment, I was overjoyed, thinking maybe if I didn't care and was obedient enough, she would still be mine. And soon, we'd have a child of our own, too. It wasn't until now that I woke up and realized I was wrong. My obedience only made Calvin bolder and lowered my importance in Laura's eyes. Even on the day of our wedding, she left me for Calvin. She even took my son to take a family photo with another man. I will never forget, standing alone in the hotel lobby, feeling helpless. The sympathetic looks from passers-by. The shock when I saw Laura's social media posts. Laura, this time I'm really letting go. After deciding to divorce, I finally called my parents. Son, since you've thought it through, just come back. My dad had his secretary book a flight ticket back to a city for me. I went home to pack my stuff. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Laura sitting on the couch with our child. Where the hell have you been? Not answering your phone. If you're out of minutes, top it up. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you? Her voice was loud, like she was accusing me of a crime. The baby cried out loudly, startled. Aren't you supposed to be with your Calvin? What do you want from me? I asked calmly. Tim, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I've explained. These days are the death anniversary of Calvin's wife and kid. He doesn't have family or friends here. What's wrong if I keep him company? I came back to hand the baby over to you. Calvin's not feeling well. I'm taking him to the hospital. I don't have time to take care of the baby. Her words came like orders. Without waiting, she shoved the crying baby into my arms. I was speechless. I'd been blind in love, not realizing this woman had no shame. She ignored our child, abandoned our family, just to care for another man. Seeing my silence, Laura was taken aback by my tearful eyes. Her tone softened, unsure. Tim, I know I was wrong to ditch you at the wedding. If you're upset, I'm sorry. But I had my reasons that day. How about this? We do the wedding again, and you can decide everything. Didn't you want a beach wedding? We'll do that. We have a kid now, we can't just keep talking about breaking up. Alright, let's move on and get that soup on. As I remained unresponsive, Laura was about to continue when her phone rang. Calvin, what? You're having an allergic reaction? Don't worry, I'm on my way. 10 minutes, sit tight. After hanging up the phone, she was visibly anxious, and her tone became impatient. Tim, this is the last time I'm humoring you. Don't push it. Haven't you ever been wrong? What were you trying to do with that comment on my social media? Don't think I'm clueless. I haven't even held you accountable yet, and you're already throwing a fit? Seeing that I remained silent, Laura, looking quite agitated, finally lost it, pointing at my nose and yelling. I looked at the woman in front of me, who was acting like a shrew, and said calmly, I don't need your humor. We're breaking up. After saying that, I took the kid and shut the bedroom door, leaving Laura outside angrily shouting, Tim, don't say I didn't warn you. Not long after, I realized the kid was burning up and covered in a rash. I had no choice but to rush him to the hospital. It might be a fever caused by an allergy, the doctor diagnosed carefully in the emergency room. Could be hereditary. Do you or your wife have an allergy history? I shook my head. Never been allergic to anything. And Laura, as far as I remember, hasn't either. Then it might be a food allergy. Can you recall what the baby ate in the last couple of days? The doctor suggested. It's best to do a comprehensive allergy screening to be prudent. His words were careful and polite, but my mind wandered back to the call Laura got at home. Calvin, you got an allergy? I'm coming over. So, Calvin had an allergy too? No, that couldn't be it, probably just something they ate. They've been together these past days. It'd be a rational explanation. I tried convincing myself, but my thoughts were all over the place. After putting the kid to sleep, I walked out of the hospital room to get some air. What I saw stunned me. Down the hallway, Laura and Calvin were locked in a passionate kiss. So this is her idea of companionship? All that talk of brotherly love? I froze on the spot. Laura took a call and hurried off. When I was about to leave, Calvin spotted me. What? Tim, Laura accompanying me to the hospital and you're stalking her? If I recall correctly, Laura warned you quite a few times, hasn't she? She's not your caged bird. He chuckled. The mockery in his eyes was blatant. In public, I didn't want to get into a spat, so I quietly said, I'm not stalking anyone. I'm here with the kid. As the words left my mouth, Calvin laughed outright. The kid? Laura was right. Tim, you're a fool. He chuckled, covering his mouth, the rash on his arm matching the kid's exactly. Without waiting for me to respond, he turned to head back to the room. I quickly stopped him and asked sharply, Calvin, what do you mean? Explain it to me. I didn't say anything. Want answers? Ask Laura yourself. Seeing I wasn't letting go, he turned and called a nurse. Ma'am, is VIP security really this lax? Letting crazies harass patients? The nurse immediately called security to restrain me. Sir, you need to leave. Struggling with security, I caught the mockery in Calvin's eyes. At some point, a crowd had gathered to watch. What a scene, causing a ruckus at a hospital. I overheard. Sounds like a love triangle. Just some hick clinging to his wife's coattails, wanting the moon. Yeah, I live next to Calvin. His wife is lovely, and they're clearly in love. Anyone can see Calvin's wealthy and kind, unlike this guy who should look in a mirror once in a while. The crowd gossiped frenziedly, all at my expense. That's when the VIP elevator opened, and Laura stepped out. In one hand she held a medical report, carrying high-end takeout from a 5-star hotel in the other. My heart sank. 7 years together, always taking care of Laura, catering to her. Never did she do anything for me. Honey, you're still unwell? Why aren't you resting, wandering around? Out of the elevator, Laura's eyes sought Calvin. She didn't even notice me. Honey? The term felt foreign and stung. In all our time together, she'd only ever used my full name. Never familiar. She also never let me use pet names. I didn't get it, but she was always so self-righteous. I just can't handle cutesy nicknames. Tim, respect what I'm comfortable with. Now I understand. It wasn't about cutesy or comfort, just about who you are. Seeing Calvin, the mockery in his eyes was gone, replaced by warmth. I always listened to you. No choice. Tim here just wouldn't let me go. That's when Laura noticed me, surprise flashing briefly in her eyes, then turning to sarcasm. Here to apologize. Regretting your outburst? The soup? Calvin's been hungry. Had you been clear, I wouldn't have bothered getting takeout. Seeing we were acquainted, the nurse signaled security to release me. She then smiled at Laura. A delivery guy, huh, Laura? Nearly caused a misunderstanding with Calvin. Neither I nor Laura spoke. Calvin recovered first, warmly holding Laura. He's your delivery guy? You should have told me sooner. Laura nodded. Turning to me, put the food in and leave. The crowd realized the mix-up. Oh, a misunderstanding. Such a sweet couple, no way they're having issues. Bet Laura wanted to surprise Calvin. How sweet. I stayed silent, just watching them. Laura grew uncomfortable under my gaze. What? Drop it and go back. There's a child at home, isn't there? Child? I couldn't help but laugh coldly inside. Right after leaving the doctor's office, I contacted my father's secretary. At his work pace, the paternity test report should be ready soon. Is the child mine or that man's? We're about to find out. Just then, my phone rang. I'm on the VIP floor of the hospital. Come on up. Everyone looked at me with puzzled expressions. Sir, unauthorized people can't just wander into the VIP area, said the nurse, trying to stop us. Laura demanded, Tim, did you lose your mind today? What are you trying to pull now? I stayed silent, just watching the elevator door. After a moment, a few doctors in lab coats emerged from the elevator. Mr. Tim, here are the reports you requested, said the middle-aged lead doctor, bowing slightly with great respect as he handed me 2 paternity reports. The report with my name showed a 0.00001% biological relation, while Calvin's was 99.999%. I laughed coldly and tossed the reports in front of Laura. Laura, did you really think I was that stupid? That I'd raise a child for you and Calvin? We're getting a divorce. When I said that, everyone's faces changed. Eyes darted to the reports scattered on the floor, and then to Laura and Calvin. Their expressions changed too. Laura's face shifted from red to white. Still she defiantly shot back. Tim, don't go overboard. You hired a bunch of actors in lab coats and printed fake reports to fool everyone? She then turned to the doctors threateningly. You know it's illegal to help someone fake things, right? Before she even finished, the young nurse loudly reprimanded. Miss Laura, this is our head of the hospital. How could there be any faking? Laura's arrogance instantly vanished as she turned to me and whispered, Tim, what do you want to do? Don't push too far. I ignored her and turned to the hospital director. Director Zhang, right? Could you please hand these reports to my legal team for review? Seeing me not responding to her, Laura tried to sweet-talk me, pulling on my sleeve with a hint of pleading in her voice. Tim, everyone's watching. Can we talk at home? Beside her, Calvin played the dutiful man, shielding the near-crying Laura. Laura, this is all my fault. If I wasn't in a bad place, you wouldn't have been here for me all the time, misunderstanding our relationship. Laura's face went pale, but she still comforted Calvin. Calvin, This has nothing to do with you. It's Tim making a big deal out of nothing. He's just insecure and keeps doubting and checking on me. Who the child's father is doesn't matter, right? The child carries his last name. Isn't that enough? The director interrupted her speech. Miss Laura, it's confirmed that Mr. Calvin is the father of your child, and at the time of birth, you were legally married to Mr. Tim. I'll pass these documents to Mr. Tim's legal team for further proceedings. The director's firm words made everyone around widen their eyes. So, the good man Calvin was actually the homewrecker. Miss Laura, turns out the delivery guy you referred to is actually your real husband. So what's Mr. Calvin then? You're neglecting your own husband and spending time with another man in the hospital. Doesn't seem right, does it? Was the crowd's sharp commentary. Laura was left speechless by their pointed questions. Each question seemed to subtly imply her infidelity and betrayal within her marriage. After a long pause, Laura finally managed to speak softly. It's all a misunderstanding. Calvin is a friend. His wife and child died in a car accident and I was helping him cope, so I had a child with him. Such a bizarre excuse. No wonder she took so long to come up with it. The looks from the crowd were filled with contempt. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. A friend? I never thought you'd go as far as having a child for a friend. Laura, you're something else. My words made Laura hang her head completely, glancing at the growing number of onlookers. She whispered in my ear, softening her tone. Tim, isn't this enough? Why air our dirty laundry like this? Her voice was gentle, yet there was a command buried within. Seeing that she had softened and offered a way out, I merely looked on with cold eyes. Laura realized something unusual about today, took hold of my arm, and pleaded, Tim, I know I've done wrong. I promise to see less of Calvin from now on. Can you forgive me this once? This tactic always worked in the past. But this time, I shook off Laura's hand. Even before knowing this, I had already decided I wanted a divorce. I just didn't expect, Laura, that the child's real father would turn out to be Calvin. Whatever reasons you had, this is a matter of principles and no longer something a bit of sweet talking can fix. I'll have the divorce papers for you later. Also, the child's in a room downstairs, remember to pick him up. I've done my duty. With that, I turned around, ready to leave, without glancing back at Laura. She stood stunned until I stepped into the elevator and then she finally reacted. Crying, she lunged to grab my arm. Tim, where are you going? Are you leaving me? Looking at the fallen, disarrayed Laura. There wasn't an ounce of emotion in my eyes, just a cold laugh. Does where I'm going concern you? Or do you still want me to stay around and help raise the child? Laura, were you thinking of me as nothing but an obedient servant? No, you're not a servant. You're my husband. Her elbow was already scraped, blood trickling down her arm, yet Laura kept grasping my clothes. It wasn't until now that she understood today's affair wasn't some sulking tantrum. I was really heartbroken. I truly wanted to separate. This can't be possible, no way. Tim, you promised you'd love me for life. Let's get married right now. Yes, now. Laura suddenly stood up, muttering, grabbing my hand and making her way to the elevator. I easily broke free, while the security standing by the director's instructions pulled Laura away. 5. She struggled hard, her wounds pulling open more and more. Tim, it hurts so much. Can't you see? She looked at me, eyes pleading. In the past, even a small scratch would have had me worried out of my mind, wishing I could take on the pain myself. But now I just stood there calmly. You should find Calvin, not me. We're done. I added, it's been me holding you back all these years. It's time I step aside. No, Tim, you're the one I love. Laura cried as she tried to break free from security. From the start, you're the only one I've wanted to marry. But those words came too late. I'm fully awake now. Without a word, I turned and walked away. The incident didn't end with my departure. Someone who witnessed it posted the whole thing online. Quickly went viral. Laura and Calvin faced brutal judgment from people on the internet. Someone even dug up their home addresses and workplaces. The backlash was enormous. About a week later, Laura called me. I had already blocked her number, so she used an unknown one. Her voice was weary, clearly tinged with tears. Tim, I know I was wrong this time. I took advantage of your love and did things that hurt you. I've cut ties with Calvin completely. The child's father is you, and it'll never be anyone else. I know you still love me. Can we start afresh, the three of us? I didn't reply and simply blocked the number. Life after leaving Laura was busy and fulfilling. Returning to City, I dove straight into work, learning everything I could. Then, I got a call from Laura's dad. Tim, come over. I need to talk to you. This afternoon at 3. Don't be late. Classic old school attitude. Dad, I wanted to talk things through with Tim. Why the attitude? Laura's voice sounded over the phone. Her dad sighed, exasperated. Why defend this kid? No skills, can't even look after a child or cook anymore. Your mom and I are getting old. We shouldn't have to watch the kid. He continued to lecture me before hanging up. I was curious about what they wanted, so the private jet landed on their building's rooftop. Before I could knock, Laura opened the door, like she was waiting for me. Tim, I knew you were just being stubborn. You didn't really go to City A to anger me, did you? Because how could you be here this afternoon right after our call? Private jet brought me. I replied coldly. Laura looked puzzled, while her dad laughed. Private jet? You got fancy fast. Since you're here, record a video clearing Laura and Calvin's names. Look at the mess you've caused. Calmly he urged. I smirked. Caused trouble? Don't you know what your daughter did? I have nothing to do with any of you, and I owe you nothing. My firm stance angered Laura's father. Owe something? Laura gave the child your last name. Remember how desperate you were to join our family? Forgotten already? Clear their names, or I'll change the child's surname. Don't expect back in our home. Changing names? I scoffed, sir, the child's not mine. Name it anything you want. Just don't use mine. My words left him speechless. Tim, don't be like that. The child is yours. Laura tried to mediate. Dad wants us to reconcile, and he means well. My silence gave him the impression I was guilty, and his arrogance grew. Didn't your parents teach you respect for elders? Just because Laura's into you doesn't mean I agreed. But since she pleaded, I'll let you off. Write a guarantee, promise not to repeat these mistakes, and read it online. It'll clear things up for Laura and Calvin, and show your sincerity. He got more animated, thinking it was a great idea. That Laura noticed my angry expression, but it was too late. I flipped the coffee table, smashing cups and plates. You're crazy, Laura's father yelled. A shard cut him. Tim, you're mad. Insane. He tried to slap me, but I dodged and flipped him over my shoulder. He crashed with a groan. Laura was too terrified to move. Am I insane? You all drove me to it. I don't want your daughter anymore. Laura, these 7 years feel wasted. Let's go our separate ways. Looking around the small apartment, my eyes reddened. I smashed everything in sight and left. Thug, get him out of here, Laura's dad yelled. I tossed the divorce papers at Laura's feet. You don't want me here? I'm leaving. That's a divorce agreement, Laura. As I turned to go, Laura grabbed me. Tim, I don't want a divorce. I'll explain everything to my parents. Trust me, I cut ties with Calvin. Deleted his contacts. Can't you forgive me once more? I turned my head to look at her, my eyes showing no emotion. Laura, you should understand that love showing up late is worth less than dirt. I don't love you anymore. Let it go. Laura's eyes went dim, but she still clung to me stubbornly. Do you really not love me anymore? Are you just letting go of 7 years? I didn't reply, just walked away. Sure enough, Laura refused to sign the divorce papers. She thought this would keep me around. I didn't reach out to her again, just handed the whole divorce process over to the company's legal team. The pros should handle the professional stuff. In just 6 months, the divorce decree was finalized. I smoothly took over the family business. Everything was getting back on track. Of course, even after the divorce, Laura didn't stop reaching out. I don't know how she found out my address. After being stopped by security multiple times, she started writing me letters. Each one was filled with love and longing for me. Tim, you're the love of my life. I can't live without you. Tim, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Tim, the kid can say daddy now. He wants to see you and I do too. Laura tried to use these letters to win me back. But too bad for her, I didn't even read them. The housekeeper would just toss them straight into the shredder. Laura is nothing more than a stranger to me now. Maybe because she didn't get any response, Laura's enthusiasm slowly faded. The letters came less and less until one late night. I was about to sleep when I got a call from company security. Laura had climbed to the rooftop, threatening to jump. I rushed over, nearly didn't recognize the woman who looked so aged. Seeing me arrive, she suddenly smiled. You see, Tim, I knew it. You still care about me. I shook my head, giving her zero hope. No, I'm just telling you not to pick my company building if you want to die. It's bad luck. As I turned to leave, Laura got desperate. Don't go. Tim, don't go. I had no other choice, that's why I did this. Tim, I think about you every single moment, you know? Without you, my world is dark. After you left, I realized how important you are. You're the light of my life. Tim, I can't live without you. If you want to punish me, these past years have been punishment enough. Please come back. Laura reached out to me with a hopeful face. But seriously, why should I? You made your choices, your mistakes. Why should I save you? I saw the police edging closer to Laura, making sure there wouldn't be any tragedy. Then, I simply turned and walked away. The police managed to restrain Laura and took her off the rooftop. Later, the hospital diagnosed her with severe mental illness. In other words, she had gone mad. After she tried to stab her own dad with a knife, Laura was sent to a mental institution, never to come out again. On the day I heard the news, the sun was shining perfectly. I thought, my life is just beginning.